Let's run some JavaScript code in the browser. I'm going to open the IDE and install it because that was an empty website. And start by turning the root file into an app. And then we create a .request file inside it to execute our code upon requests. We can just write static HTML1 code for now. And actually I prefer to have the sys file at the top for clarity. So just write whatever here to verify that it works, and it does. Then we want to include a script file here. So let's create it first, script.js. And it shall be static 1. Because it's just some static asset. We won't modify it on the server, just return it as is, whatever we add here. So let's just add an alert here to verify that our code is actually executing. It will not execute for now because it's not included by the request file. So we can simply include it like this. Okay, so the reason why this works is because the HTML1 app or engine takes apart our HTML code and puts everything in the correct place. We could also write a body here and the HTML around it and doc type and whatever, but everything else is optional, so the system will just find the head, run this, it works. And if we look at the codes, you will see that we have a full doc type, and that was added by the platform to make the toolbar work. So yeah, this will be a valid document, so we don't need to worry about the boilerplate. Anyways, so let's write something more interesting than that. Let's create a button here that contains a number. Whoops. And every time that is pressed, it shall be incremented. So let's define a class counter for it. Typically, like in old school JavaScript, the way we would do this is just write onClick shell, and here we write some JavaScript function to be executed. But that doesn't work in Joomla because that's a security risk to mix HTML with JavaScript. So Joomla doesn't allow that. It's protecting us from doing that. So we are going to attach the click event handler dynamically via JavaScript, but let's create several buttons so that we can actually see that each one works separately from each other. So inside our JavaScript file, first of all, we want to wait for the document to be loaded because the way browsers load the content is that well, by the time the document reaches this point and our script is executed, the body is still empty. And then as the document arrives on the fly, the browser adds those document elements to the document. So we have to wait for all of them to be present before we want to execute our code. So because of that, we are going to write this function window.addEventListener DOM content loaded. And if that happens, our function shall be executed. And again, just to see that it works, I'm going to write on alert here. Okay, it does work. And there are buttons. So again, nothing happens so far. Now, we want to select our buttons. So we are going to say our buttons shall be window.documents.getElements by class name. And we name them counter. So these are our buttons. And we want to iterate on them. So var so we iterate on the buttons one after the other. And we want to attach an event listener to the click event of each button, which we can do by saying button.addEventListener for the click event, and just write a separate function here. I'm going to name it click By the way, I just prefer this style. It's the same as writing function click. If you prefer the other style, go for it. So our button is the target of the click event. So we can say event.target is our button. And we can get the contents of the button by saying button.inner HTML. We want to parse it as an int so that we can increment it. And after that, we can just write it back to the document. So that will increment the button every time we click it. Let's come back here. And as we click it, it actually works. In case you run into any errors, it's actually nice to have the console open and do the testing. So if should anything not work and would you get any errors, you could see them. And that's it.